Mommy, please don't go. Chisom's tiny voice echoed through the quiet compound. As she clung to her mother's legs, tears streaming down her face, Ngozi sighed, praying her daughter's fingers away gently. Chisom, I have to go. It's work, my love. You know it's just the two of us, mommy and daughter conquering the world. I'll be back before you know it. But Chisom wouldn't stop crying. Her little hands reached out as Ngozi walked away, leaving her in her grandma's arms. Mommy, please, don't leave me. That place is not good. Ngozi hesitated for a brief moment, her chest tightening at the desperation in her daughter's voice. But she shook it off. She had responsibilities, bills to pay, a future to secure. She smiled one last time and waved. I'll be back, I promise. It was a cold morning in Lagos. Ngozi woke up suddenly to the cries of her newborn baby girl. The cry was weak but urgent. It reminded her of all the tough times she had faced to get to this moment. The past 6 months had been full of pain and strength. She had lost her husband, Nnamdi, in a car accident while she was pregnant. It had been a miracle that she survived the trauma and carried her child to term. As she cuddled little Chisom in her arms, Ngozi whispered, It's just us now, baby, mother and daughter, conquering the world. Her voice cracked with emotion, but she managed to smile through her tears. This little girl was all she had left of Nnamdi, and she was determined to give her the world no matter the cost. When Chisom turned 6 months, something strange began to happen. Every time she was placed on the floor, she would crawl towards Nnamdi's portrait in the living room. The first time Ngozi saw it, she froze. Chisom's tiny hands reached out to the frame, her fingers brushing against Nnamdi's face. Then, as if on a cue, she let out a giggle, her toothless smile lighting up the room. Ngozi's chest tightened. She sat on the couch, tears streaming down her face as she watched her baby girl repeat this ritual almost every day. It was as though Chisom could feel her father's presence. You miss him too, don't you? She whispered one evening as she held her daughter close. I wish he were here to see how amazing you are. As Chisom grew older, the strange moment didn't stop. Some nights, Ngozi would wake up to find her daughter standing by the window, smiling and softly calling, Daddy, come inside. Each time, Ngozi felt his chill run down her spine. She knew children were innocent and connected to things adults couldn't understand. But this was beyond her comprehension. Ngozi tried to dismiss it as imagination. After all, Chisom was a happy child, curious, bright, and full of life. Ngozi worked hard as an event planner, taking on jobs to ensure that her daughter had everything she needed. But with the nature of her work, she often had to travel out of town. During those times, she left Chisom with her grandmother, Mama Ngozi, who lived in a quiet village a few hours away. Before each trip, Ngozi would kneel before her daughter, hold her hands and say, It's just the two of us, my love. Mommy and daughter conquering the world. I'll be back before you know it. Chisom always nodded and smiled, though Ngozi noticed the sadness in her eyes whenever she left. When Chisom turned 6, Ngozi planned a big birthday celebration for her. She wanted her daughter to know how deeply loved she was. The party was colorful and lively, with children running around, music blaring and balloons decoration every corner. As the cake was cut, Chisom looked at her mother and said, "Mommy, we are conquering the world, right?" Ngozi laughed and hugged her. "Yes, my baby, always." One Saturday morning, 2 weeks after the birthday party, Chisom woke up crying. Ngozi rushed into her room. "What is it, baby? Did you have a bad dream?" Chisom looked at her mother with teary eyes. "I saw you, Mom. You traveled with Daddy and left me at Grandma's house. I don't want to stay there. I want to be with you." Ngozi chuckled, relieved that it was just a dream. "But you love Grandma's house, don't you? She spoils you with so many treats." Chisom shook her head. Her lips was trembling. "No, Mom, I want you." Ngozi sat at the bed and gently stroked her daughter's hair. "We'll always conquer the world together, my love. Now stop crying, okay? It was just a dream." But the dream seemed to linger in Chisom's mind. She became unusually clingy, refusing to let her mother out of her sight. Ngozi dismissed it was just a phase, though a small part of her wondered if there was more to it. 2 weeks later, Chisom had another dream, similar to the first. This time she woke up in the middle of the night shaking. Ngozi held her close, trying to calm her down. "What happened this time?" Chisom buried her face in her mother's chest. "You traveled again, Mom. I begged you not to go, but you left, and something bad happened to you." Ngozi's heart sank. "It's just a dream, my darling," she said. Though her voice wavered, dreams aren't real. The following weekend, Ngozi had an event to plan in another state. It was a big job, one that would pay well enough to cover Chisom's school fees for the term. As usual, she packed Chisom's bag for a stay at her grandma's house. But that morning, Chisom clung to her legs, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, please don't go. Please don't leave," she begged. "That place is not good." Ngozi sighed, her patience wearing thin. "Chisom, I have to go. They've already paid me. If I don't work, how will I give you the life you deserve? School fees are around the corner, baby." "But you said it's just the two of us, mommy and daughter, right?" Ngozi knelt down and cupped her daughter's face. "I'll be back before you know it, my love. Trust me, okay?" Reluctantly, Chisom nodded. Though the tears didn't stop, Ngozi kissed her forehead and drove her to her grandma's house. 2 hours later, Mama Ngozi's phone rang. It was Ngozi's number on the screen. Thinking her daughter had forgotten something, Mama Ngozi answered cheerfully. "Hello, my dear. What is it? Hope you didn't forget anything." But the voice on the other end wasn't Ngozi's. It was a man. "Hello, ma'am. The owner of this phone just had an accident. Your number was one of her last calls." Mama Ngozi froze, her hands trembling. "Where is she? Is she okay?" "She's been rushed to the nearest hospital. Come quickly. It was a serious accident." As the call ended, Chisom, who had been playing nearby, suddenly burst into tears. "Mommy," she screamed. "Mommy, please don't go." Mama Ngozi's heart broke. She didn't need to say a word. Chisom already knew something terrible had happened. It took almost 2 hours for Mama Ngozi and Chisom to reach the hospital. The journey felt like eternity. Chisom held tightly to her grandmother's hand. Her small body was trembling. She didn't speak a word, but tears streamed gently down her face. When they arrived, a nurse directed them to the emergency ward. Ngozi was lying unconscious on the hospital bed, her face pale and bruised. Machines beamed around her and her right arm was in a cast. "Mommy," Chisom cried, running to her mother's side. She grabbed Ngozi's arm, her little fingers wrapping tightly around it. "Mommy, wake up. You promised me. You said you would come back after the event." Mama Ngozi placed a hand on Chisom's shoulder, trying to comfort her. But her own heart was breaking. Seeing her daughter in such a fragile state was almost too much to bear. The doctor walked in, his expression grim. "Are you her family?" he asked gently. "Yes," Mama Ngozi replied. She's my daughter." "How is she, doctor? Will she be okay?" The doctor sighed. "She suffered severe internal injuries from the accident. We are doing everything we can, but the next 48 hours are critical. We need to monitor her closely." Chisom didn't understand most of what the doctor said, but she could see it in his face. Her mother was in serious danger. "Mommy," she whispered, tears falling into Ngozi's hand. "You didn't listen to me. But please don't go. I need you." She began to sing their favorite song, her voice shaking with emotion. "Mommy and daughter conquering the world, with love in our hearts stronger than gold. Together we'll stand, never apart. Mommy and daughter, one beating heart." Her little voice echoed in the hospital room. But Ngozi didn't move. Chisom looked up at her grandmother, her eyes wide with desperation. "Grandma, why isn't she waking up? She always sings with me." Mama Ngozi couldn't find the right words to answer. She simply pulled Chisom into her arms and held her close. The next 2 days were a blur. Chisom spent every waking moment by her mother's bedside, talking to her, holding her hand and singing their song. But Ngozi remained unresponsive. Then on the second evening, the doctor called Mama Ngozi aside. His expression was sober. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "We did everything we could, but she didn't make it." Mama Ngozi's knee buckled. She leaned against the wall for support. No, this can't be happening," she whispered. "What will I tell her daughter?" In the room, Chisom felt it before anyone told her. She looked at her mother's lifeless body and screamed, "Mom, no, you can't leave me. How will I conquer the world without you?" She climbed onto the bed, shaking her mother's shoulder. "Wake up, Mommy. You promised to come back after the event. You promised." The nurses gently pulled her away, but Chisom fought against them. "Please, don't take her away from me. Mommy, please don't go." Her cries echoed through the hospital, piercing the hearts of everyone who heard them. The funeral was held a week later. Ngozi was buried in her hometown, surrounded by families, friends and colleagues who spoke of her kindness. But none of it compared a matter to Chisom. All she wanted was her mother back. As the casket was lowered into the ground, Chisom stood at the edge of the grave, holding a small photo of her and her mother. "Mommy," she whispered. Her voice was breaking. "You promised me. You said we would conquer the world together. How can I do it without you?" She placed the photo on the casket and began to sing their favorite song. "Mommy and daughter conquering the world, with love in our hearts stronger than gold. Together we'll stand, never apart. Mommy and daughter, one beating heart." As her voice faded, the mourners around her wiped their tears. Even in her grief, Chisom's love for her mother shone brightly. Life after Ngozi's death was a shadow of what it used to be. Chisom moved in permanently with her grandma, who did her best to fill the void left behind, but no one could replace Ngozi. Chisom became quieter, more withdrawn. She no longer ran around the house laughing or asking endless questions about the world. Instead, she spent hours staring at her mother's picture, whispering, "Mommy, I miss you. I hope you are proud of me." One day, as Chisom was walking home from school, she noticed a strange woman standing by the roadside. The woman's clothes were tattered, her hair wild and unkempt. She looked like a mad woman. But what caught Chisom's attention was that the woman seemed to know her. "Chisom," the woman called, her voice gentle. "Come here." Chisom froze. She didn't recognize the woman, but something about her voice felt familiar. Without thinking, she turned and ran home. The next day, the same thing happened. And the day after that. For an entire week, the woman appeared on the same road, always calling Chisom's name. But she never showed up when Chisom was with her grandmother. Finally, Chisom decided to face her. One afternoon, as she was walking home alone, she saw the woman again. Gathering her courage, she approached her. "Good afternoon, ma," Chisom said. "Why do you call me? And how do you know my name?" The woman smiled, her eyes soft and sad. "I was sent to say goodbye to you. I didn't have the chance before, and to tell you that I'll always be here." Chisom's heart skipped a beat. "Who sent you?" she asked. The woman leaned closer. "Your mother." Tears welled up in Chisom's eyes. Tell her the world is really crazy and lonely." The woman nodded, her expression full of understanding. "Be strong, my dear. Even without mommy, you can still conquer the world." Chisom stared at the woman, tears streaming down her face. But before she could say another word, the woman turned and walked away. That was the last time Chisom saw her. But the woman's words stayed with her. It became a spark of hope in her heart. Even without your mommy, you can still conquer the world. At 17 years old, Chisom was accepted into universities to study medicine and surgery. Her grandma had aged rapidly over the years. Her once strong frame was now fragile, and her voice, which used to be filled with commanding authority, was now a soft whisper. Despite her struggles, she never complained. She always said your mother would have wanted you to chase your dreams. No matter how hard it gets, I'll make sure you do so. One day, Chisom, now a young woman, felt a familiar ache in her heart. She missed her mother. The memory of the mad woman and her words 11 years ago still lingered in her mind, giving her a strange kind of comfort on her darkest days. Her grandmother called out to her from inside the room. "Chisom, are you ready for school? Don't be late for your lectures." Chisom ran into the house and hugged her grandmother tightly. "Mama, I'm not going anywhere today. You're not feeling well, and I need to take care of you." Her grandmother smiled weakly and touched her face. "My child, your future is brighter than this little house. Don't worry about me. God will take care of me." Chisom couldn't argue, but her heart was torn. She knew that if her grandmother wasn't around, she would be all alone in the world. As the months passed, her grandmother's health worsened. Chisom juggled her classes and her caregiving duties. Every night after studying, she would sit by her grandmother's bedside, holding her hand and singing the same song she used to sing to her mother. The song would smooth her grandmother to sleep, but Chisom would often find herself crying silently afterward. One night, as she sat on the bed beside her grandmother, something strange happened. She felt a cool breeze rush through the room. Even though the windows were closed, her grandmother stared and opened her eyes wide, staring at the corner of the room. "Chisom," she whispered. "Yes, Mama." "Your mother, she's here. She's standing right here." Chisom froze. She felt goosebumps all over her body, but saw nothing in the corner. "Mama, what are you talking about?" Her grandmother smiled faintly and squeezed her hand. "She says she's proud of you. She's proud of the woman you're becoming, and she wants you to stay strong." Chisom's heart raced. "Mama, please don't talk like this. I hope you're not going anywhere. I still need you." Her grandmother closed her eyes and sighed deeply. "You'll be fine, my dear. Just like I told your mother before she left. I'll tell you the same. Be brave. Keep going. You'll conquer the world. Even if it feels lonely." Tears streamed down Chisom's face. She didn't know what to say. 3 days after that night, her grandmother passed away in her sleep. Chisom found her lifeless body early in the morning, her face calm and at peace. The loss hit her harder than anything she had ever experienced. For the second time in her young life, she felt completely abandoned. The funeral was small, attended by few neighbors and distant relatives. Chisom stood by the graveside, holding a photo of her mother and her grandmother together, tears streaming down her face. "You both left me," she whispered, "but I promise I'll make you proud. I'll conquer the world, just like you said." Life after her grandmother's death was unbearably difficult. Chisom had to work part-time at a local restaurant to support herself while continuing her studies, as her grandmother's pension had stopped being paid. Some nights she barely ate. Some days she didn't even have the strength to attend lectures. But she held on to the memories of her mother and her grandmother like a lifeline, using their words to push herself forward. One evening, as she walked back from her shift at the restaurant, she passed the same spot where she had met the mad woman years back. She stopped in her tracks, her heart pounding. There was no one there, but she felt an overwhelming presence. The breeze around her seemed to whisper her name, and for a moment, she thought she heard her mother's voice. Mother and daughter conquering the world. Chisom's eyes filled with tears. She smiled through her pain, whispering back, "Just you and me, Mommy. I'll keep going." Years passed and Chisom graduated from medical school as one of the top students in her class. On the day of her graduation, as she stood on the stage to receive her certificate and license to practice, she looked out into the crowd. She imagined her mother and grandmother sitting there, clapping proudly. After the ceremony, she walked to the cemetery where they had both been buried. She sat by their graves, her certificates in her hand. "I did it. I made it, and I'll continue going. I'll conquer the world for all of us." The wind blew gently, and for a brief moment, she thought she heard their voices in the breeze. Mommy and daughter conquering the world. Chisom smiled. The journey wasn't over, but she knew she wasn't alone. The story teaches that parents should listen to their children, no matter how young they are. Children may sense things adults overlook, and paying attention to their feelings, dreams, and instincts could prevent regrets. Also, it teaches that life may not always be easy, but with courage and determination and belief, we can overcome challenges and achieve great things. It teaches us to hold on to hope and remember that love never truly leaves us.